Another one is mandatory fun. I'm sure has probably had mandatory fun on some days in the Navy has those days too. We're going to force you to have fun. So I just want to explore the idea of joy. How do you command someone to go out and experience joy? So joy, we have to go look at the idea of joy here. The idea of joy, first of all, is relational. So joy is a byproduct of relationship. So you experience joy in relationship. And it's a byproduct of something that we could call like-mindedness. When two people are thinking alike, the byproduct of that is joy. So you experience a very deep sense of satisfaction. So if we could diagram this out and think about joy for a minute, you have you are there, you're like the center of the universe, and then you are constantly interacting with somebody else, whoever that is. And what we want to do is think about our like-mindedness. And how does this lead us to joy? And it would kind of go like this, if we diagrammed it out. If you said something, if you related to the other person, and in your relating to them, they totally get it, right? And they're able to swing that relation around and send it right back and at the full force so that you get it, and then you swing it back. And maybe you have a friend that every time you get together, it's like you've never left from the last time you saw them. And, time ceases to exist when you're with somebody because the joy, you can so relate to them that you kind of get lost in time, right? You've kind of entered eternity, something like that. It's when you're able through your like-mindedness to enjoy something. So that's joy. That's the positive side. And I want to show you now, let's test it on the negative, because what happens when you don't get like-mindedness, right? So here's my example. We've done this before, but here's my example. Let's say we can all imagine this happening somewhere. You have a girlfriend and you have a boyfriend, and the girlfriend says, honey, let's go watch the sunset, right? And so you're watching the sunset and she says to her boyfriend, oh, isn't that sunset so amazing? And his response is something like, meh, like, it's not so great. Well, what did he do to the idea of joy, this getting joy? Well, he just truncated it, right? He just totally shut down the idea of joy so that when it gets sent back to the girlfriend, she doesn't get the full, there's no like-mindedness because he's not into it, right? And that'll cause frustration, eventually anger if it continues for long enough. So you can all imagine that when you're with somebody that you don't have like-mindedness, you say something and they just can't go along with it, that time then tends to drag on. You go on a bad date and it lasted forever because it was just, you couldn't handle sitting there with that person. So you don't experience joy when there's no like-mindedness. Where on the other hand, if she were to say, look at that amazing sunset, and he came back and said, yes, it's totally amazing. Well, now he's swinging that back around, and now they can go back and forth and have this relation that builds and builds and builds and becomes very cohesive. So joy is relational. Joy is like-mindedness. Now that's on the horizontal plane between two people, but what about you and God? What if we put it on the vertical plane? Well, you get the same idea. You stand before God and you say, thank you, God, for everything you've done. And God says, yes, you're welcome. And I'm going to swing that back around and I'm going to send you a blessing. And you go, yes, thank you, God, for your blessing. And you're so amazing. And when you can go back and forth with God and become like-minded with God, the joy of the Lord increases. It's like when Romans says, in the book of Romans, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. When you become like-minded with God, you experience a joy that's beyond understanding. You begin to enjoy just the teeniest elements of God's creation because you're like-minded with God. You're celebrating. So I think part of when God says, come rejoice before me, the point is go rejoice. Go stand there and rejoice. And what will happen is joy will start to emerge out of that as you're praising God and God is sending down his blessings, the joy begins to emerge. And the more like-minded we become with God, the more we experience joy in the world, which in the middle of utter chaos, you can find joy. So joy is a powerful emotion because of it's so deep, but we have to remember it's relational and it's like-mindedness. So part of that is show up to the celebration and joy will begin to emerge even if you didn't feel like going that year. Something like that. Okay, so that's joy. Let's go now. What I want to do is take you from joy. So God says, come before me and rejoice.